Hi, everyone. I'm David Aragona, and welcome to the August 31st edition of Horses to Watch, where we take a look back at some replays from the past week, trying to find horses that encountered adversity in their trips and might be worth betting back when they run back in the future. We're going to begin by taking a look at two races from last Saturday, Travers Day at Saratoga. They ran 7 graded stakes on that card. We're not going to talk about any of those, though. We're going to talk about a couple of the undercard races that they ran earlier in the day, beginning with race 3 from that August 28th card. This is an allowance, nominators of one other than for the fillies and mares, going a mile and a 16th on the turf course. Let's break them from the gate and focus on the gray horse, the number 4, Windfall Profit. And you can see there with that white face, breaks about a half step slowly and is going to get a little bit shuffled back to the tail end of the field. And that's not the kind of start that I think her connections, Shug McGahee and company, and rider Luis Saez wanted to get, because in her prior races, she's a horse that had really done her best running towards the front end. And you can see moving into the clubhouse turn here, she's throwing her head about a little bit, getting a little bit ranked towards the back of the pack. And that's partly due to the fact that on the front end, that number 1 horse who's leading the way begins to really back down the pace as they move around the clubhouse turn. If you look at the Time Form US pace figures for this race, that first fraction of 24 flat is color-coded blue. You typically see much quicker opening quarters on the outer turf course, the Mellon turf course, I should say, and that's why this field gets so bunched up as they move on to the backstretch. And there's Windfall Profit in those white and red Stuart Janney silks, about 2 wide moving down the backstretch. And that's, like I said, not where Luis Saez, her rider, wanted her to be in last place. And he's going to have to make a decision here as they move down the backstretch and progress onto the far turn, because you don't want to lose ground, but you also don't want to lose your chance to make your move and actually have a chance to be successful in this race. So he's going to take the first of 2 options and try to get a head start on some of the other closers by making this wide slingshot move around the far turn. You can see he commences it right here, and she is just quickly going past runners, but doing it while moving 5 wide around the turn. You can see as they come off to the quarter pole here, how wide she is, literally 5 paths off the rail as they come into the stretch. And losing ground and expending energy at that point in the race can sap a horse's finish a little bit. And you're going to see that happen here as she does hang a little bit in the late stages, really never able to get by the eventual winner, the number 7 Kitten by the Sea. And Windfall Profit is even going to get passed for second place here at the very end by a horse that took the second of those 2 options, waiting until the last possible moment to make her move. So she does end up finishing 3rd in this race, but given the fact that she had that less than ideal start, and because she lost so much ground making that wide premature move on the far turn, I think Windfall Profit ran a lot better than that 3rd place result would indicate. And she is a horse who, coming into this race, appeared that she was a little bit off form, but Shug McGahee prior to this race had sent her to the Fairhill Training Center. That's where horses sometimes go to do a little bit of rehabilitation, some alternative training methods, and apparently that got her to run a much better performance this time. She just wasn't quite able to translate it into a victory. Let's move on to another race from that August 28th Saturday card. This is race 5, a New York bred maiden specialty for the 2-year-olds, going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. Let's break these runners from the gate and focus on a first-time starter, the number 6 Brady's Legacy, in those yellow silks with the green cap. And you can see he breaks about 2 lengths slowly. There he is towards the back of the pack as they come out of the trees. We're going to highlight him, and he is already behind the rest of the field here. And there are 2 problems with this. Number 1, he broke slowly, so he's already a little bit behind the 8 ball, but also he's not a horse that is comfortable racing at the back of the pack. And you can see that right here as he gets really rank under Jose Ortiz, who's trying to get him to settle towards the back so he can launch a run later. But this horse wants to go right now. He's a first-time starter that was racing in blinkers for the first time, so maybe he's one that was a little difficult in his training. And you can see that trait right here as he is wide, rank, throwing his head about. Jose is doing everything he can just to get this horse to settle. Furthermore, some might say that this Saturday track at Saratoga was just a tad bit speed favoring. And what I really thought was that it was difficult to run through the kickback. And you especially see that with some of these younger horses. They're uncomfortable racing in behind others, especially in behind a wall of horses like Brady's Legacy was in this race. And by the time they get to the top of the stretch, Jose is asking in here, but he had already exerted far too much energy fighting his rider early in the race. So Brady's Legacy is just going to have no finish. And he'll finish, I think, in the penultimate position, second to last across the wire here, far back, I think only getting a 24 buyer. I don't really care so much about the result though, because I had watched some of this horse's morning training coming into this race. He had taken a bit of money off those workouts because he had been showing a little bit of speed in the mornings. He had sold for $250,000 off a 2-year-old sales work earlier in the year as a son of Street Boss. So I think he has more potential to show speed than what he did in this race. He's just going to have to break much better next time and figure out those bad gait habits that he exhibited in this race if he's going to be more successful. But I think this is one that will show a lot more next time out. But sometimes these horses that are really green in their first starts, they can go one of two ways. So you do want to see him make progress next time. If he doesn't, maybe this is one you want to stay away from in the future. Let's finish things up with a race from Sunday's card at Saratoga. August 29th, it's the final race of the day and final race of the week at Saratoga. Race 10, starter allowance, 50,000, mile and a 16th on the Mellon Turf Course. Let's break these runners from the gate, and I want to focus on two horses, the number 7 Giro and the number 8 Made My Day. They both break just fine in this race, but you're going to see this is a tale of two very different trips. And I like to pose this question on this show sometimes, show two horses that had trouble in different ways and kind of just ponder which one was the worst trip, because sometimes it's really hard to tell. There's a lot of gray area and subjectivity here. As they move into the clubhouse turn, there's Made My Day in about mid-pack with those dark green and pink silks in about 6th place. He is going 3 to 4 wide into the clubhouse turn, so he's losing some ground there. Giro, meanwhile, is in those 3 diamonds, turquoise and yellow silks on the rail in about 8th or 9th place. And his rider, Ricardo Santana, is doing everything you want to do at this point in the race, saving ground in about mid-pack in a race where the pace is going to come apart a little bit. So he's in a good position at this point in time, whereas Made My Day lost ground on the far turn, and now his rider, Tyler Gaffaleone, really has no option since the field is pretty bunched, but to advance wide down the backstretch, and he is about 4 wide at this point. It's a little bit hard to see because he's obscured by some runners inside of him, but you're going to see Made My Day appear in about 5th place in a moment there with that dark green cap, making a premature 4 wide move after the leader is right here. There he is, moving up into 3rd place, and he is losing significant ground around both turns. But as they come to the quarter pole, let's switch our focus to Giro, who is in that turquoise cap and yellow silks down towards the inside, right up behind that horse in yellow who's fading a little bit, and we're highlighting him right here. He is going to get stopped in traffic as two horses who were setting the pace back up right in his face, and Ricardo Santana has nowhere to go for a brief point in time there, and you see him kind of awkwardly have to alter course down towards the inside, and he really lost momentum on the eventual winner of this race, the number 6 Tulane, who was able to build up momentum racing on the outside, whereas Giro had to get stopped briefly and regain his momentum coming up the inside. He's going to eventually finish 4th, I think a couple places ahead of Made My Day, who really just kind of faded a little bit in the stretch after getting that wide trip. So the question I'm posing is, which horse got the worst trip? The one who saved ground and had to pause briefly in traffic at the top of the stretch, or the one who was losing ground around both turns? And I think answering that question gets a little difficult in this particular race, because typically when the rails are down and they're racing right on the hedge, you want to be saving ground on this turf course. But this was kind of an odd race where all of the horses that were saving ground were unsuccessful, and the ones that came around the outside from off the pace were the ones that achieved success in this race. And actually the eventual winner, Tulane, was also about 3 wide, 2 to 3 wide, I should say, around both turns, never on the rail. So kind of a difficult race to figure out. I will just state some Trackist data that I found coming out of this race. Both of these horses covered a different amount of ground, needless to say. Made My Day, according to Trackist, covered 63 more feet than Giro, and that's a big difference in a 2-turn turf race, to lose ground around both turns and cover that much more ground than another horse. So I think both of these are worth watching when they make their subsequent starts, but I would leave it up to you to decide which of these horses had the more difficult trip. So those are all the horses to watch for this week. Remember that you can catch future episodes on upcoming Wednesdays. And if you want to follow these horses that I highlighted on this show, you can add them to your horse watch on drf.com. Just add these horses to a list and you will get email notifications when they run back in the future. So thanks for tuning in this week, and make sure to catch future episodes of Horses to Watch on upcoming Wednesdays.